Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of the Creators Reality Series where I'm as authentic as it could be. Let's get right into this video. A lot of people think the hardest part of being a creator is making videos. Learning the camera, learning the editing, or figuring out titles, thumbnails, all of that. And yes, those things matter. But once you actually start posting consistently, you realize something else. The hardest part is not technical, it's emotional. It's showing up when proof is still low. It's creating when the response is still quiet. It's trying to build something that feels very real to you while the outside world barely reacts to it yet. That's where it gets difficult because in the early phase, the work can feel meaningful from the inside and almost invisible from the outside. And if you don't understand the proper way, the whole process starts getting heavy in a way that's hard to explain. This right here, where you landed on this video, is the Created Reality Series, a series on my YouTube channel where we are talking about what it actually feels like to build something on YouTube. Not the polished version, not the motivational version, the real one. And today, in this episode, we are talking about something almost every small creator runs into at some point, the hardest part of being a small creator. Because once you understand this, you stop taking certain struggles so personal and you give yourself a real chance to stay in the game long enough to become something. At the center of this whole video and this problem, the core part, the hardest part is this. You are carrying a process that matters deeply to you, while it still looks small to almost everyone else out there. You know what it takes to make a video. You know how much thinking goes into it. You know how uncomfortable it can be to sit down and record a video. You know what it means to keep going when you're not fully confident yet. But the outside world doesn't feel any of that. To them, it's just a video, or worse, it's nothing at all. Maybe they scroll past it. Maybe they don't even see it. And that creates a strange kind of pressure because your inner seriousness is already there, but the outer proof is still weak. And for a while, you have to live inside the gap. And that gap, this place is where most people struggle because the work is not just effort, it's effort combined with uncertainty, effort combined with low feedback, combined with silence. And that combination is hard to carry over time. And this is something that gets misunderstood from a lot of people out there. People talk about fear of judgment, about hate comments, about criticism. And yes, those things exist too. But for most small creators, that's not the hardest part. The hardest part is the silence you get. Silence after uploading, silence after trying, silence after putting time and energy into something you actually care about. Because silence leaves too much space for interpretation. Now your mind steps in and starts filling that gap. Your mind tells you something like, maybe nobody cares. Maybe this isn't good enough. Maybe I'm forcing something. Maybe this is not going anywhere. And because there's no strong external signal to correct those thoughts yet, they start feeling real. That's why the early phase is so psychological. You are trying to keep your relationship with the work stable, while the outside response is still too weak to support you. And that's really not easy. And from the outside, most people don't see that. They just see a small channel, a few uploads, low numbers, nothing special. But from the inside, there's often a lot happening. A lot of effort, a lot of doubt, a lot of internal negotiation. So much time and energy you put into those videos. You're trying to stay consistent while not fully knowing if it's working even in a year or something like that. You're trying to improve while not having clear feedback yet. You're trying to believe in something that hasn't proven itself yet externally. That's not a live process. That's a really, really heavy one. And I think out of my personal experience, this phase deserves more respect than it usually gets. Because this is not just the phase where you are learning content. This is the phase where you are learning how to stay emotional stable without much proof yet. And that's a real skill, a hard-earned skill. And most people never develop it because they leave before they have to. And the ones who stayed don't do it because they felt confident the whole time. They do it because they learned how to continue even when they didn't feel great, even when they doubted themselves, even when the results didn't match the effort yet. That's what builds real creators. There's also a kind of loneliness in this phase that's hard to explain. Not because you are physically alone, but because the experience is too difficult to communicate to people who are not in it. From your side, this can feel like a serious journey. You're trying to become better, clearer, more confident, more consistent. But from the outside of this bubble you're currently in, it still looks small. And that creates a disconnection. You care more than it looks like you should. You take it more seriously than other people understand. And if you're not careful, that can turn into something uncomfortable. You might start feeling embarrassed by how much this matters to you, embarrassed by how early you still are, embarrassed that the version in your head feels bigger than the reality you can show. And that's where a lot of people start pulling back. Not because they don't want it anymore, not because they don't want to put out their videos out there in the world anymore, but because the gap feels uncomfortable to carry. Another thing that makes this phase hard is that the pressure you start putting on each video. When you are small, every upload can feel symbolic. You wanted to prove something, that the channel has potential, that you are not wasting your time, that you actually have to say something, right? And because of that, every video becomes heavier than it should be. It's no longer just a piece of content, it's a statement. A moment that feels like it has to mean something. And that's dangerous. Now the process stops flowing. Now every upload feels like it matters too much. And that creates overthinking, maybe delay or friction, and eventually burnout. And a lot of small creators don't burn out because they are producing too much. They burn out because every piece of content carries too much emotional weight. And that's exhausting. But to prevent all of this, at some point you have to learn to let a video be a rep, not a verdict, not a defined moment, just a step on the ladder. That shift alone can make such a such a big difference, can make your process so much lighter and more sustainable. And another reason this phase feels so intense is because everything still feels personal. The channel is close to you. The numbers feel close to you. A video underperforms and it feels like you underperform. The silence feels like rejection. The slow growth feels like a reflection of your current level. That's not fully rational, but it's very human. Because there isn't enough distance yet between you and the work. You're still building that separation, still learning how to see a video as something you made, not something you are. You identify with your product, your performance on the thing you made, but that's not necessary in the long term. And that takes time to get this switch. Bigger creators often have more distance between them. They've seen enough results, enough variation, enough randomness to not take every outcome personally. But small creators usually don't have that yet. So everything feels closer, heavier, more intense, which leads to the real challenge of this phase. Can you take the work seriously without making every result dramatic? Can you care without collapsing when the response is quiet? Can you stay consistent without needing constant reassurance? That's the balance you are searching. That's why you are clicking or watching this video. Because if you depend too much on external proof, you become unstable. But if you stop caring completely, the work loses its depth and you lose your fire. So you need both care and steadiness. And that combination is not easy to build. It develops slowly through experience. So you need to stay long enough in the process. The simple question for you, what should you actually do with this whole phase you're currently in? First of all, the first part of this whole thing is you need to understand the hardest part is emotional, not technically. Once you expect that, it stops surprising you, you know? The second thing is you stop treating silence as proof that nothing is happening. Sometimes silence just means you are still early. The third thing is you need to reduce the emotional meaning of each upload. A video can matter without having to prove anything. That distinction will save your energy. And the fourth thing is build better internal metrics, not just views and subscribers, not just the numbers. Ask yourself if you are getting clearer, more natural, or more consistent. And finally, respect this phase. Being a small creator is not a failure state. It's a real stage of development, a stage where you are building something internally before it becomes visible externally. It's not glamorous. It doesn't feel impressive yet, but it's necessary. And please put out your videos out there. YouTube is such a big platform, but you have to say something and you need to put it out there because you are unique. So if this phase feels harder than you expected, it doesn't mean you are doing something wrong. It usually means you have finally experienced the real work. Not just making videos, but staying steady while making them in a phase that doesn't give you much back yet. And that's where a lot of real creators are formed. This is it for this episode in the Creators Reality series. If you liked it, please share it, like it, or watch the other videos. And in the next episode, next week, we are going to move into something more practical again. The truth about consistency on YouTube. Because a lot of people think consistency is just about uploading more, but the real issue is deeper than that. But for now, right here, remember this one. The hardest part of being a small creator is not making videos. It's carrying a process that matters deeply to you while the outside world still gives you very little proof in return.